other schemas inside your declaration part. Okay, so for this one, schema inclusion, okay, I will not show you yet here, okay, but we will gradually do the schema inclusion later on how to do that, okay, especially if let's say you want to communicate with your friends module and so on, where you want to get your friends information and then to be used inside your system and so on, then you need to do schema inclusion. Okay, so you can also add schema inclusion inside the declaration part. Okay, so for example, before this, you have learned about how to do variable declaration. So inside the declaration part, you are going to do something like this. Okay, your variable declaration. So you just put single line, single line, single line like that inside your variable, inside your declaration part, inside the declaration part. Okay, okay. The next one is the predicate or logical part. Okay, the predicate part or logical, where you are going to have expression and also constraint inside there. Any Z statements, any expression, expression, or any precondition, post condition, you are going to do inside your predicate part. So whatever variable that you are going to put inside your predicate part must refer to your identifier in the declaration part just now, or global identifier. Okay, remember you have the axiomatic definition. You can also refer to the global identifier, okay, from your axiomatic definition, or you refer to the variable declaration from the declaration part just now. Okay, wherever that variable that you use, whatever your condition or your statements that you want to refer, so you refer to the identifiers of variable name, not the type. You will need to refer to the identifier name. Okay, so inside your predicate part, every statement okay, will be actually end with conjunction. End. Okay, so even though you didn't put the conjunction, it will be assumed there is a conjunction symbol appear there. So even though you didn't put, it is inside there exists a conjunction symbol there. So that's why when you do your predicate part, it's okay not to put conjunction symbol. Okay, it's okay not to put conjunction symbol. And then for a predicate part, you have to always remember whatever the constraint, whatever the expression that you do there must always provide true result. Okay, must always provide true result. Cannot be false result there. If false result, automatically you have to call the error scenario, something like that. Okay, so the result or the answer or whatever that you put there must always produce true result. Okay, so whatever condition, okay, you must be less than or equal or greater than, whatever the symbols that you put there, all those statements must always produce true result. Remember that. Okay, for the predicate part, so always must produce true result. Okay, so these are the three parts that you have to remember for your Z schema. So the schema name, there are rules to write the schema name, the declaration part where you are going to do declarations of your variable, for example, also schema inclusion later. And then for the predicate part where you are going to put your expression, Z expression, Z statement, your condition, your constraints, everything will be inside the predicate part. Okay, will be inside there. So that are actually the things that you have to remember inside a single symbol, the graphical form of your Z schema. You have to know what you need to include inside each part there. Okay, so now let's start with our Z schema. Okay, so the first one, remember I told you the first Z schema that you are going to do, we call as state space schema. Sometimes I just say a state schema. Okay, it's the same thing. or another term will be state space schema. Okay, it's the same thing. Sometimes I will just say state schema. So, or sometimes I just say state space schema. So it will be the same thing. So you don't confuse. State schema or state space schema will be the same thing. Sometimes I will just say as starting state. Okay, so it's also the same term. Okay, so state space schema is actually static aspect of our schema, where this state space schema is actually variable that you have inside there, or the constraint that you put here is actually to deal with our database data. Okay, to communicate with our database. So whatever the identifier that you use, whatever the constraint, all is actually to show as a whole system of your module or whatever lah. Means that whatever that you put here, you are going to store data using the variable here. You are going to communicate with your database data. Okay, so it is a starting state because this is the first one of your graphical form of your schema just now. This is the first or the starting graphical form that you are going to use inside your Z schema using the Z schema format just now. Okay, this is the first one. So that's why it is also called as the starting state. Okay, so for this one, okay, you are going to have variables. Same, you have, because the graphical form just now, you have the declaration, you have the predicate. So you have to follow that rules. So same thing for static space. You are going to have variable declaration, okay, and also the predicate part. Okay, the predicate part is actually to show what happened inside your whole system there. Okay, what is actually your general constraint for your part. Okay, general constraint for your part means global lah. Another word to say, global for your operation. Okay, so that is actually state space schema. So how to write will be the same, where you have the declaration part and also the predicate part. You will follow the same format. Okay, just that the declaration inside the declaration part, the variable declaration inside your declaration part, those variable are actually you use to communicate with database, and then whatever the constraint, whatever the expression that you put in the predicate part will be global to all your parts there. Okay, means general lah, general for all the things that you want to write inside your system. Okay, so this is actually where this is for your state space schema, where you are going to start or start your Z schema. So after your state space schema, okay, so you have written your what your schema symbol just now. You write down all your state space and so on. Then you are going to do what we call as initial state schema. Okay, initialization. Okay, so this is also a part of static aspect of your Z schema, but we don't really talk about initial state lah. Okay, we are going to concentrate on state space schema. State space schema. Okay, so initial state. Okay, it will appear once only in your schema, where you use it to initialize your data. Initialize your data that link to your database. That's all. Okay, so initial state will be after your state space schema, where you use it to initialize your variable from your state space schema. Okay, so the next one after initial state will be operation state. Okay, so just now remember state space schema, initial state, and operation state. Okay, so the third one will be operation state. Operation state can be two. It's either query state or change state. Okay, either query states or change state. So for query state, okay, for query state, query means you ask. So how many students in a class? Okay, how many students attend the class, for example? You ask question. So from when you ask question, the result is the output. but the data in your database will not change at all because you are asking how many students attend the class, for example. Then maybe the answer is 90. Then the result is 90. There are no changes inside your database data. So when there is no changes in your database data, so we call this as query state operation schema. Okay, query state operation schema. Query, ask question. So when you ask questions without changing the database data, okay, so you have to tell people, okay, this schema, operation schema, will not change your database, will not change. Okay, then people need to know there is no changes in the database data. So how are you going to tell these people? You need to use what we call as Z notation. Okay, the symbol is this one. This symbol, so this is what we call as Z notation symbol. So Z notation symbol for the operation schema will tell other people that this operation schema will not have an update or changes in my database data. Okay, so whatever that you do, no changes in the database data. Okay, so that is query state. So you just retrieve the information, no changes in the database data. So you have to indicate Z notation symbol. So the Z notation symbol is using this symbol. This is to show the Z notation symbol. Okay, so that is operation schema, query state operation schema. Okay, the next operation schema is what we call as change state operation schema. Okay, the next operation schema is what we call as change state. So the word there change means there is an update to our database data. Okay, there is an update to our database data. For example, just now I said I want to add a customer into the database. Okay, so before this, the customer does not exist at all in my database. But after I add, the customer information will be added into my database. So before that, I don't have the customer info. Now, after I added the customer, it will be inside my database already. So there is an update to my database data. So I have to inform other people that for this operation, okay, there is an update to my database data. So I have to show using delta symbol. Okay, so we call this as delta symbol. Okay, the triangle, okay, the triangle symbol, delta symbol is to be together when the operation schema that you do is a change state schema. Okay, so you have to use this symbol, delta symbol. So this is to show there are some updates to your database. If let's say you remove, then you remove the customer, for example. Also, there is an update because before that does not remove. Now you remove already the customer info. So there is an update. Then you have to use delta symbol inside your database, inside your operation schema lah, change state operation schema. Okay, so this symbol must be used. Okay, so another things that you have to remember, okay, is actually about pre and post condition. Okay, pre and post condition. So when we do our schema, especially operation schema, okay, because there are some changes, also there are no changes in our database. Okay, we are going to do some checking inside our schema. So we can have what we call as pre and post condition. So this pre and post condition will appear inside the predicate part of your schema. Okay, predicate part of your schema. So for example, the constraint, the expression just now inside the predicate part of your schema. So precondition and post condition, the word pre and post, I think all of you know what is pre and post. It's actually pre means you are checking before, and then post is after. Okay, pre means before, post is after. So there are conditions that, let's say I want to add the customer just now. I have to make sure that the customer does not exist yet in my database. So then when I need to check that the customer does not exist yet in my database, we call that as precondition. Okay, because I need to check before I add. Okay, so when I need to check before, so this is precondition. Okay, but after that, okay, means after I check, then the condition, oh, the customer does not exist yet. Then I add. Then I add the customer's information inside the database. So after I add the customer's information inside the database, then I have to inform other people that this is adding the customer into database. So when you add the customer into database, that is what we call as after, post condition. So you have to show also what happened. Okay, so post condition is after. So you are going to show inside your predicate part also. Okay, so that is what we call as pre and post condition. So normally pre and post condition always appear inside your operation schema. Okay, inside your operation schema. Normally will be inside operation schema. Inside state space, we don't have condition except the constraint. That is general. But you don't have pre and post condition inside your state space schema. Pre and post condition normally will be inside your operation schema onwards, means error scenarios. But starting from the operation schema. Remember that. Okay, remember that pre and post condition normally will be inside the operation schema. Okay, so when you do a operation schema just now, okay, let's say I want to check whether the customer exists or not in the system yet, means I need some input from the user. Okay, I need some input from this. I need to check whether the customer exists or not. So I need the input, right? So when I put the data there, then I check, oh, the customer does not exist. Means that the input that I use is actually to do the checking and so on. Okay, so we need this input, okay, inside our schema. So, and you want to produce output, whatever, then we need the output variable, input and output variable inside our schema. So normally also for the input and output variable with question mark and exclamation mark, you will use this inside operation schema onwards. You will not use input and output variable inside state space schema. You don't use question mark or exclamation marks inside your state space schema. You will use a lot, okay, inputs and outputs variable inside your operation schema onwards. Okay, that is another thing that you have to remember. Pre and post condition will be inside operation schema onwards. Also, inputs and output variable, and also a update variable with a prime symbol also will be inside the operation schema onwards. Okay, so you have to remember that this is actually when you want to declare your variable, input variable or output variable, or where or which schema that you have to declare those variable. So normally will be inside operation schema onwards. Okay, operation schema onwards. Okay. So for the pre and post condition, because it's checking, you can use any symbols, less than, equal than, greater than symbols, or okay, all those operators, quantifiers, existential, all those things. Okay, you can use this inside your pre and post condition. Okay, whatever that you want to have, your operation, your symbols, you can use inside as your precondition statement lah. Okay, so we will actually practice on this when it comes to tutorial and so on lah. Okay, and then after that also, or maybe, wait, how many? Because I want to show you first. Or maybe we take a few minutes break before I proceed with post and pre and post condition, because I want to show you using Microsoft Word first. Okay, So we take a few minutes break. Then after that, I will continue showing you the how to do the schema using Microsoft Word first. Okay, we take a few minutes break. Is it okay? Maybe we will start around. So we take 5 minutes break. Is it okay? So 11:10 lah. 11:10 we will continue our class. Okay, we take a few minutes break.